And this is the continued case from March 24th. We still have a number of items out there, but one of the things that we're going to do tonight is we were going to go through the list of waivers. So I believe Patrick sent out the list of waivers to everybody today. We already had it, but I wanted to make sure that everybody had it easily accessible so we could go through the waivers this evening. I also see we have town council with us this evening. Good to see you, Amy Questle. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good.
Is there any chance that I could get a copy? I didn't get a copy of the waiver list. Does it include the 8-foot fence?
No,
Oh, sorry.
we're on Doopy Street waivers.
Oh, then never mind.
Yeah, okay. And we also have George Pucci from town council with us also for this. Okay. Good evening, everybody. And we have the applicant, Lou Petrozzi. Good evening, Mr. Petrozzi. So the way we usually do this is we go through each one of the waivers and we discuss whether that is a waiver that is applicable or necessary for this site development. So does anybody have any questions before we start? We're going to run down the list of waivers. Go ahead, Suzanne.
We're using the one dated 4/14. Looks like this. Right?
Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Patrick.
Yep, so Ms. Murphy, the list that I gave you is kind of, it's a easier to read version of the letter from January 10th. Yeah, so that is the
Much
information.
easier, I appreciate it.
Yeah, the information on there is the same information that is from the January 10th letter.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
So January 10th can go to side and we're working off the 14th. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, and I agree that will be easier to go through. So the first one, the waiver, number one on this is, that's, to me, that's fine. It's section 2 of the zoning bylaws. That's just stating that this is an affordable housing development. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this one? Okay, so I think that one's straightforward. So we can say yes on that. Okay. Next one is open space amenities, and the applicant has requested a waiver on that for this this development. What are the board members' thoughts on this one?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
It looks like the response to each of the waivers associated with our permit rules and regs, if I'm reading them correctly, are basically taking the position that our rules and regs are in excess of the requirements of 40B. And they don't provide any specific justification other than that for the grant of the waiver. So I'm not sure how best to deal with that. It strikes me that our rules and regs were adopted consistent with 40B, so then that's what they're there for, to help us evaluate the applications. So I'm not objecting if there's a technical reason to grant the waiver, but I don't. It doesn't appear that that's the basis that's been provided.
Right. The applicant is stating it's a 40B, so therefore it should be waived. Is that what you're saying, Bob?
Well, but these are, it is a 40B, but we have our comprehensive permit rules and regulations which apply to 40Bs. So I don't, and the justification for the waiver essentially is, as I read it, an argument that our comprehensive permit rules and regulations, or at least those that are listed, are not permitted under Chapter 40B, and so should be waived on that basis only, rather than on as a result of the design of the project or some other reason. So I wasn't, I guess it was just challenging to evaluate the waiver request when it's sort of like a broadside at the regulations that we're trying to implement.
Can I comment on that, John?
Yeah, go ahead, George.
First, good evening, John and members of the board. George Pucci from Town Council's office. I just want to note that I agree with Bob's comments. That's a perfectly acceptable and legal regulation that you have regarding recreation and open space. I mean, those are interests that are protected under 40B. So what I would recommend you do is a substantive analysis. In other words, I'm not saying that you can't waive that or, condition it appropriately, but if you choose to waive that regulation or relax it, to the degree necessary to allow the project to go forward, that's one thing. That's a substantive, appropriate way of acting on that waiver request, but I would recommend against basing any waiver on the claim that it exceeds your authority under 40B. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
Yep, that makes sense. And I think what we need is, at least on that, and we did have Cliff Bomer provide some technical assistance on this. I think we need to have more information on that. So,
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Judy.
I could just make a comment. I think sometimes people misread the section of the 40B regs that is cited here. The regulation doesn't say you can't have regulations that ask for something more or different. It just says if you have regulations that basically clone what the state says, then you're in this sort of, the safe harbor assumption is that your regulations are fine. But it doesn't mean you can't have some additional expectations or requirement. The issue is they have to be reasonable. And, no one has to grant a waiver for something when it's this wide open and not documented.
Okay. So, on this one, I'd suggest that we hold this and we need further information. Ashley Clark, is that what you think we should do from your perspective?
I do, and I think that's going to be the case for a lot of these. The board has repeatedly asked for updated drawings and a site plan that matches the architecturals by way of the design peer reviewer Cliff Bomer. I spoke with Cliff, and his opinion is that the revised set did not make any meaningful progress towards the requested information. So my hunch is that there are going to be a lot of these waivers about setbacks and whatnot that the board might find that they don't have enough information on to decide tonight.
Okay, Ashley, thank you for those comments. So let's just, the goal for tonight was to go through the waivers, but one of the things that we're seeing is that we need additional information. And even the next one, same, I'm just seeing copy and paste on this for the reason for the waiver. And we have seen no pro forma. So,
I want to weigh in on that one, though,
okay,
John.
go ahead, George.
That I think he makes a point. It's not really you really can't get into asking for a pro forma unless and until you get to the point where you're having a dialogue, you're seeking to impose some condition, or you're denying a waiver that the applicant says renders the project uneconomic. And then in response to that claim during the public hearing, then you can get into requesting a pro forma. So, I do want to note a little caution about that, about requiring a pro forma just as a blanket matter. I would tend to agree with the applicant that is premature. If that regulation is written that way, That's not really the way it's set up to work. It's more, say, I'll give an example. Say you have 10 units, and because of open space and design concerns or the stormwater issues or whatever, the board wants to limit the amount of units to 5 units. Then at that point, if the applicant says, well, I can't do it at 5 units, that renders it uneconomic, then you can get into requesting a pro forma, but you haven't gotten to that type of stage or analysis of this project. So I do just want to note for that one, that's a little different than the other ones where you want a substantive, you want to address the regulations substantively, like, okay, why is the applicant seeking a waiver of open space requirements on a substantive basis? Then you can decide whether or not to grant a waiver, partial or in full. But this one is different than that type of thing. So I'm not comfortable with you saying we want a pro forma from you, or we need more information on that because you haven't gotten to that stage really.
Okay. So we can leave that one blank on that one. Going to the next one. Impact analysis of natural and built environment.
I mean, that's not even required, right? It's not 20 units, so you don't need to grant that.
Correct.
As a waiver.
Amy, if you just write not required. Same thing with the next one, traffic impact reports, and we have spent a lot of time on traffic, but this is for 20 or more. Okay, next one, statement of impact on municipal facilities and services. We have had a lot of conversations about the fire department access to this, and those are still open. Is this where we're talking about fire department services?
I think it's all services.
Okay, well, we can leave that one. Still need more information on that. As far as the master plan, what's people's thought on that?
Isn't it the same as the other one, the open space?
Different. Yeah, John, can I just weigh in briefly too? I try to speak when spoken to. I'm not a board member, but that one seems pretty simple. I mean, if you have a master plan and an open space plan, those are clearly relevant. Under the regulations, not just your regulations, but the 40B regulations. And, that type of condition doesn't require some enormous analysis, 3 inches thick. I mean, that could, if it's not much of an issue with respect to where this is being built or whatever, it could be addressed in 1 or 2 sentences, I would think, about a substantive reason,
okay.
How the project is consistent with the master plan and open space plan. So it definitely does not exceed your authority under 40B, but I hate to see disputes over issues that really could be pretty easily remedied. And even if this particular street is an open, identified in the master plan and open space plan, it either is consistent or it isn't. It's not, is it part of a area where residential development is, zoned for that area, then it would be consistent, in accordance with the applicant's position. So it's not, I'm just saying it, you know, regulations like this, there's no need to be objecting to that as beyond the scope of your authority. I would recommend that the applicant just address it. You know, he may not even he doesn't necessarily need a waiver from it if he can just give a couple of sentences of why it complies.
So let's just, there's no need for that's easily accomplished. So we can write no waiver for this.
So
and the next one.
I just want to say, I think a helpful kind of lens to go through these with is this waiver necessary to allow the development, to allow the facilitation of the development to move forward? Is this necessary for this project to be able to exist? And I think, you know, if he gave us a page where he like looked at the plan and made some statements, and then the board said, well, we want a full analysis, you know, like that's a different story, but I don't think it's asking too much. So.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Mr. Petrosi, go ahead.
I don't know where this list of, I did not request any waivers under your, in my January 10th, 2021, from the regulations of the zoning board per se. I requested waivers from the other town regulations. For example, on the next one, $5,000 application fee. Well, we paid that. We scheduled a public hearing, and you know, I just don't know where all of this originates from. These particular items that are being discussed right now. So I know I do recall writing a letter early on. Regarding your regulations that you adopted last year, and indicated at that point, prior to the application being submitted, the 40B application being submitted, that these regulations, the board's regulations, were inappropriate under the regulations. So, but under these proceedings, during the hearing process and as part of the application process, Wall Street did not request specifically any waivers from these sections.
Okay, well, I think that if you sent a letter saying that you couldn't comply with those or should not have to comply with them, that's requesting a waiver. Ashley, is that where these items came from?
They're on page 2 of the January paperwork.
I'm going to Patrick in on this one, if that's okay.
Mr. Chairman, so that was something I took from page 2 of the letter.
Right.
If Mr. Petrosi feels that was not necessarily part of a waiver, then I guess I would default to what he meant by including those. So
I think that this raises another kind of, I think.
This is so poorly crafted. I'm finding it very frustrating. And
Charlie, they should really say, this is the extent to the waiver. So if a 10-foot setback's required, we're requesting a waiver for 5 feet, and they should describe exactly where that waiver is. And so, I mean, this list needs a lot of work. I don't think it's anywhere.
Yeah, I agree. And in fact, this is just so people, I know we have people at home watching, we've got 25 people on tonight. This is the Doopy Street comprehensive permit. It is not the South Walpole Summer Street 40B comprehensive permit. We'll be getting to that in a little bit. So, board members, I think these are, based on the letter, page 2, I do think these are things that were outlined seeking a waiver from, and there was just no detail given. It was just a blanket waivers on all these. So I think we need more information on these.
So, Mr. Chairman, so section 3.219 calls for a filing fee of $5,000, which we paid. So I don't even know why that's on the list. It's it may be in my list, but we paid it, so therefore the request is a moot point. Same thing for the next one. Open a public hearing within 30 days.
So perhaps it would be helpful.
So,
Go ahead, Ashley.
Sorry, I think that, you know, we can kind of get to the meat of these, and some of these kind of from like the rules and regulations, we can I think get to the number of things, but I think it would be helpful if Mr. Petrosi went back and gave us an actual waivers list showing the waiver that he needs, the number that's required, and what he's providing.
Well, I agree. In fact, you know, Town Council, George, at this point, we're trying to work off a document that is not manageable. And just as Ashley said, we need to understand what waivers are being requested and what is the actual, you know, specific waiver. You know, is it 10 feet? Is it 5 feet? Not just a waiver. You're shaking, you know, you're nodding your head. What's your thought, George? Am I in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, that you just stated a hypothetical. I don't know if that is the case. If we get to actual substantive issues, whether it is just a blanket request that way, or if it's a true analysis. In other words, you require 10 feet. I need it to be 5 feet for these parts of the plan for XYZ reasons. Then the board can make a decision on that. So if that type of analysis could, if that's like buried or hidden in here somewhere and it's going to be like, you know, a needle in a haystack to pull it out, then I would recommend maybe doing a revised list and going through it that way, rather than muscling through it tonight, as long as the applicant is agreeable to that, because I think you're in an extended deadline within the public hearing at this point.
We are, and we still need some other information from fire. So that's fine. And I also see on here things such as the deck encroachment up to 60 inches from the setbacks. But where is that? Where is that? On what dwellings, and where is it located? That I think is more. That's what we need to have on this. Ashley, is there something you want to add?
Oh, I just pulled up for the sake. I think it is important that we kind of go through these at least at a high level and note for the applicant kind of if you need more information on it. So I just pulled up just the waivers list, and so that's what's here. This is what was submitted. It's revised January 10th, 2021.
Right. Okay, so stop right there. And one of the things, this is setbacks where it's a minimum of 22 feet, and then rear yard setbacks of 25 feet. We need to see what on the map, on the site plan, what are the specific areas that are requiring this waiver. And I think that, I mean, that's reasonable. Just to say the waiver, we need to see where it is and how many of them there are, what's being requested.
And this is a great example of this. Waive compliance with dimensional requirements, including impervious surface, front. You need to know, okay, 15% is required, but what is being provided? So
it's on the plan.
It needs to live in the waivers list as a separate thing.
Okay. So we need to see what on the waivers list, what the specific waivers are being requested and where they are on the property. Suzanne, other board members, do you agree that we need this, or what's your thoughts?
I thought that they had even moved buildings around for the fire chief, and this is dated in January, and I thought buildings were moved.
Those are reflected in the plan.
The plan, we're talking about the waiver list.
Right. So, for example, not to interrupt you, Suzanne, but
you did.
Right, so we have 8, this was revised to reflect the change when we went from 12 units down to 8 single families. That's what this waiver list provides for. So everything that is related to 8 principal buildings on a lot, that is the waiver when it's not permitted under your regular zoning permit. So I'm happy to give you more detail if that's what you're looking for, but you know, the plan is sort of like the supplementary document to the waiver request. So whatever's shown on the plan is requested in the waivers. If we need to put the two together, I'm happy to do that.
That's what we need. We need it put together so that we can see there are 5 buildings of the 8 that are requested. You need waivers for because of the side yard setback. That's what we need. So we can see each waiver, what's being requested. Town council, is that reasonable to request that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, you need to know what you're doing.
Could I just add something, Charlie?
Yes.
I just want to note for the record that this is not a new request. This has been from, this is not a new thing. And I would also like to note that we have testimony from the design peer reviewer who says that the site plan, the engineering, and the architecturals do not all, they don't all say the same thing. So they're not integrated. And so I don't know how we could look at the plans and look at the site plan and look at the engineering and be able to, glean what is actually even being requested. So I just want to make that clear because the board has asked on several occasions over the span of this hearing for the applicant to review that list and to provide that additional information, which includes all of the things matching. So I just want to note that here tonight.
John, can I just ask, did the applicant get a chance to see Mr. Bomer's latest report? I thought that was very helpful. He had actually sent it out, I think, today. Cliff Bomer's report.
I haven't seen it.
That would be helpful because he updated, the issues that Ashley were talking about, like in a different color off the original review. I saw that today.
Amy Messier, I believe, sent that out.
Oh, sorry.
But I don't recall a super recent letter from Cliff.
Right.
Just bear with me 1 second. Let me, John, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let
me just pull it up.
So, if we've received it,
Doopy Street. Oh, it was February 20.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's the latest one that I have.
That is a great letter, and that is dated February, and that was provided to the applicant, and we have discussed it. And the board has asked Wall Street Development to please look at that letter and provide the requested information. So just want to be very clear that this is not new stuff that's being asked for.
Okay, so there's a number of items. I don't want to go through the whole waiver list tonight because it's not satisfactory so that we can go through and understand what we're actually giving for waivers. The applicant needs to provide a list stating exactly what the waivers are that are being requested and where those waivers take place on the site plan. The other thing that we need to resolve tonight is that we have Tetra Tech has a request for additional funds for this. Ashley, this is a letter dated from March 22nd. And has the town, and we already requested this to Mr. Petrosi, have we received anything on this?
We have not.
Okay. Mr. Petrosi, this is for additional peer review for this, an amendment of $6,000.
And what, may I ask, would that peer review be for?
It is stated in the letter for plan revisions and resubmittals. and the applicant's design team, resulting in additional review costs beyond the original authorized scope from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that's what it's for.
Well, it's according to my, based on his letter from February, there hasn't been any technical review of this project that hadn't already been resolved as of February 22nd. So I'm kind of confused as to where these additional funds and what the scope is that he is reviewing, since he's basically said in his letter that everything has been resolved as of February 22nd. So,
So, Mr. Petrozzi, can I just confirm, did you get the letter that we sent to you on March 23rd?
No letter from you folks.
Well, we can re-forward you the email where we sent you the letter.
Okay, fine. Well, it's not going to change my position. My position is that, you know, the Tetra Tech and whoever else, they don't have carte blanche with the peer review. And just because they send a letter into the board saying, well, we need $6,000 more, then that means that I'm automatically responsible for paying it. It doesn't work that way. So if you have a scope of work that was in addition to the original scope of work that was contracted for, you had a duty and an obligation to present it to me for review. Not that it's a carte blanche, $6,000, and I'm responsible for paying it. It doesn't work that way.
So what we'll do is, Mr. Petrozzi, we'll send the information to you outlining the work that was done and the letter dated March 22nd from Tetra Tech.
And Mr. Chairman, one other thing, if you don't mind, you know, presumably the way that is worded, that it seems like they've already spent the time. And so I'd like to see an invoice. I'd like to see where the time was spent. How did this $6,000 come about? Because the original proposal was for $9,000. So now you're asking for a 66% more money for something that was only for additional review. It doesn't make sense.
Okay, so as everybody that's here at the meeting knows, this project has changed numerous times. There's been a back and forth with your engineer and Tetra Tech on the drainage for this site, the layout of the buildings. So there's been additional work above and beyond the original scope, but that's fine. You will get that information, but this is just to notify you in the public hearing that there has been an amendment of $6,000 for the peer review on this, and it sounds like you already did receive it, but you thought it was beyond the scope.
I got a copy of an email, but I didn't get any kind of scope of work, or I don't know what it's for, or I don't know where we spent the money, any of that stuff. So,
Mr. Petrozzi, we use email to contact you and to communicate. We sent this email. I'm pulled it up here, March 23rd. This was attached. So, if you had these kinds of concerns, it would be helpful if we could address them in March and not the middle of April at a hearing.
That's okay. So
put it on my shoulders then.
Ashley, I think what we need to do is we need to continue this. And Mr. Petrozzi, how much time do you need to get the revised waiver list so that it lines up with everything that you're asking for waivers on this?
Well, since we reinvented the chart, why don't I get a copy of the chart that Patrick has put together, and I'll try and put my waiver request, coordinate it with your chart, and see if I can get more specific details on where the waivers are requested, because it is true that we did move buildings around, and it may have affected where the waivers that we are requesting, either for side yard requirements or rear yard requirements, in that particular instance. So
we understand that. So when do you want to continue this hearing until?
Well, right, tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. I'm not.
How about 2 weeks? Can you fit me in 2 weeks?
That would be Wednesday the 28th. We do not have a board meeting scheduled that night, but board members, could you make a meeting on the 28th so that we can go through this?
we have another meeting on May 5th for Burns Avenue. Do you want to do it that night?
Ashley, is Mr. Bomer, do you think we could get him for the 5th of May? I know it's...
I can ask. The other thing, so I can find out about May 5th, but I don't know. I can find out in the next 30 seconds.
I know.
The other thing that, Chair Lee, I think might be helpful for the board to discuss is you've seen the waiver list. There is, yes, the waivers list, which has not changed. It is always been what it is. The table is the table. So you need that to show the requested waiver from what's required and what is being requested. But also, it might be helpful to address this issue of the plans not matching up across engineering and stormwater and architectural and so on.
Yeah.
Basically, that letter that Cliff provided that I think is very helpful and very clearly lays out, you know, what you would need to review this project.
Okay. And the applicant has a copy of that letter, right? Or it's in the it's in the file, right?
It's in the file. It's posted online. We've emailed it to him. If there's a better way for us to communicate information to him, that would be good to know.
So let's, Mr. Petrozzi, will you take a look at the letter from Bomer Associates and address the issues of the plans lining up with the architecturals and the engineering?
Sure, thank you.
Okay.
I will do that.
Okay.
So do you want to do this on the 5th? Would that be more convenient?
Amy Messier, what else do we have on the 5th for that night?
We have the opening of the 300 Stone Street remand and Burns Ave modification number 2.
Okay, and George, you'll be there for Burns Ave modification number 2. Is that correct?
Correct. As well as that 300 Stone Street.
Okay.
That should be fairly short. We're just kind of, you're opening the hearing on that night, and I'm kind of updating you as to why it's back before you.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Sure, not to pile on, but one more thing that before we move this on. So the peer review for Tetra Tech, what's the best way to handle that so that we're prepared for May 5th?
Then send me a copy of the invoice.
Yeah. So, Ashley, what we need from Tetra Tech is an outline of the additional work that was provided, and I know that the work was. We've gone back and forth. This project has gone back and forth way beyond the original scope, and you know, Tetra Tech needs to provide that to you know, to the zoning board, and then we'll pass it on.
So we still need the board to approve those changes, and we still need a check in that amount. I know we have the invoices that we can easily send. I mean, Amy could probably do that on the fly right now. I just want to make sure that we're clear about our procedures, and maybe town council can help advise.
Yeah, it looked reasonable, but let's try to provide Mr. Petrozzi for whatever he's looking for, so that they can just finish their work, you know, and get it done. So if they can provide any further backup, first of all, let's make sure he has what we all have, so we know what we're talking about, even if it has to be resent. And then from there, if you know, he wants further backup, maybe Tetra Tech can provide that. I just really would like to see there not be a dispute over, you know, the scope of the final peer review on this. And as John pointed out, it's changed a number of times. So, you know, I'm sure that their work isn't complete. I know that were Patrick or I to sit down and try to write a decision, there's no meaningful, you know, one-stop shopping of the input that you've gotten from the peer reviewer, you know, that we could use to condition, you know, a possible approval with conditions. So to the extent that can be worked out, I would recommend doing it.
One last thing, Mr. Chairman, you know, not that I want to belabor this point, but at some point, Tetra Tech submitted an invoice or something, and my funds, the original funds that I had put up, the $9,000, it would have been at zero. Sometime if we went through all these modifications sometime prior to this, they would have submitted an invoice for work that they've done, and the town would have said, hey, we don't have any more money in our account. Now, that never happened. So, again, I'm not begrudging them.
It's happening. It's happening now. So
Well,
that's
all right. Well, let's take a look at all the
Right.
invoices or whatever.
Okay.
We'll work on.
okay. So, Mr. Petrosi, do you want to extend keep this hearing open until May 6th, and our next hearing will be on May 5th?
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate it. I love it.
Okay, so at the request of the applicant, this will be continued until 7 o'clock on May 5th. Could I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Moved by Suzanne.
Second.
Second by Jane. Any further discussion on this? Okay. All those in favor of continuing and extending, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Murphy, aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got to do a roll call vote. Sorry, folks. Suzanne Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Bob Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Drew Delaney.
Aye.
Jane Coffey.
Aye.
And I'm John Lee. Aye. Okay.
And John, just one last thing, you'll get a signed extension from the applicant on that.
Yeah, I'll be sending an email.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay.
I want to get you in trouble, George.
Oh, me. Thank you. Okay. Okay.
Patrick, you'll send me the chart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I'll work on that. Thank you.
Okay. The next case we have is going to be continued. This is for Moose Hill Road, case number 2024, Radke Associates for 270 Moose Hill Road comprehensive permit pursuant to Mass General Laws 40B. This is where a single family home is being torn down and 8 owner units is being proposed under the 40B law. The applicant has requested a continuance on this and and we're very concerned about this because this has gone on and on and on. The applicant has agreed to extend 90 days after the original 180 days that would be running out in, I believe, May of this year. So the applicant has sent that. Amy, do you have anything else to add on that? Amy Messier, anything else?
I do not know.
Okay, you and I
Do
talked.
we have it in writing, John?
Amy has it in, do you have it in writing from the applicant?
From Moose Hill?
Yes.
I do, yes.
Okay. And also extending 90 days because this is very unusual to just continue it, and with 40B, we're under 180 days on that. So, okay.
And I think you're done with me tonight, right, John? I'm gonna leave you in Amy Quessel's capable hands.
Yes, okay.
John, do we need a vote on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna vote on, could I have a motion to continue case number 2024 until, Amy, what did we say for the continuance on that?
May 19th.
May 19th at 7 o'clock by Zoom. Okay, could I have a motion to that
So
effect?
moved.
Moved by Suzanne, second please.
Second.
Second by Jane.
by Jane.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Bob Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Suzanne Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Jane Coffey.
Aye.
Drew Delaney.
Aye.
And John Lee, aye. Okay, so that one's continued, and we are very aware that this has happened repeatedly. So, okay, next one is.
So I'm gonna say goodnight.
Thanks,
Thank you,
George.
John.
Bye, George.
Thank you. Thanks, George.
Goodbye.
Bye, George.
Thanks very much.
And
Good night.
Amy Quessel, I understand that you're here for a limited amount of time, so thank you. Sorry to keep you on hold for this. The next one, now this is a closed hearing. This is case number 0320 for 55 SS LLC, Summer Street, South Walpole. And we've had a lot of discussion back and forth, and really what we're coming down to is where we are on this project. Is it the best we can do for the town, the neighbors, and the future residents that live at this proposed development? And I think the zoning board has gone back and forth and struggled with many things, but the one thing that we're holding on at this point is the height of the large apartment buildings, with over, one of them with proposed 100 units or so and one less. And it really comes down to, you know, how many stories. We've had input from the fire department about safety. We've had input on open space, and what I think we need to do is we have two experts with us. We have Judy Barrett on the 40B aspect, and we have Town Council Amy Questle with us. And you know, we've had some conversations at the last meeting about board members' concerns about this. So where are we right now? That's the question. I think the project has gotten better since we opened the hearings, but we still have, I know board members have concerns about the heights of the building. Amy Questle, do you want to give us some advice or guidance going forward? And then I'm going to get to Judy Barrett and ask her the same question.
So sure, Your Honor, sorry, Mr. Chairman, sorry. I had a long day.
He loved it.
I had a long day in court today. I actually supplied a draft decision based on the last meeting that we had. And so I supplied that in red line as you guys requested. That decision basically reflects the opinion of the board as of the last meeting, which is 4 stories, and I think by reducing those buildings down to 4 stories, we come up with I think it's 236 units. Now that being said, you know, Ashley had mentioned a very good idea, and I know that Mr. Fitzgerald also had mentioned the same, which was that, you know, we should go back and look through the record, you know, through the fire department submittals as to the safety, because it appears that the reduction in 6 stories to 4 stories was based on safety. And then the other issue that it was based on is the road length. And there's really, I don't see a way around that. I don't see that changing. And so I think the road is what the road is. I don't see that changing at all. I don't know how we would condition it so it could change. If that would be a major plan change at that point, to require them to have another you know, entrance or exit, not an emergency entrance or exit, but a whole other emergency, you know, a whole other entrance or exit. I looked at the plans. I really did. I went over them very closely, and I can't find a way that that's going to happen. So, so the roadway length, I think, is what it is. It is a loop. It's not necessarily a dead end. It's not a cul-de-sac. It's not a T. It is a loop system. But it is, so right now, I think the, you know, what the board needs to really weigh in on is the height, the reduction in height, and where that reduction in height is going to be and why.
Okay, and that's where I feel we're at right now. The site is, as you described, Amy, it's what it is. It's constrained, and we still can have concerns about the roadway, but doesn't seem like we can't condition anything that would change that. Board members, I'm sorry, Judy Barrett, you and I talked the other day. Is there anything you want to say at this point? You've been through this whole process with us since the beginning, pre-COVID. What's your thoughts on where we're at?
Well, you know, my concern for all of you is you've spent months trying to make this a better project. And it's not where you want it to be. And I don't think it's going to be. But I think you have to ask yourselves, is the time that you spent trying to make this better, trying to address the technical issues that the peer review consultants have raised, that your own staff have raised. Are you willing to lose all that? I think that's the question you need to wrestle with. And that's not a threat. It's just something for you to think about. So I don't want to suggest ever to any board I work with that I'm trying to tell you what your decision should be. That's not my point. But I want you to kind of think about the potential outcome of what you do. You approve it at the 5 stories the applicant apparently is willing to accept. You get everything that you and the town have tried to negotiate with this applicant. If this project goes to the HAC, my concern is you lose all that. It just goes away. So that's the risk I think you got to think about. And you got to arrive at a place in your own hearts where you're going to be comfortable with whatever you do. But I just want you to understand all that's going to go away. And what the HAC will be looking at is the original submission. So that's where you are. I don't think there's much of anything that would discourage this applicant from appealing. That's just my opinion. Maybe he would end up accepting the project he's negotiated and changed and still go with 4 stories, but I haven't heard that. So, I just think based on what you've got to decide, did you end up with something that's better than where you started? And if you did, then I think you got to think about whether you want to put that at risk.
Okay. And obviously, Judy, you've been with us through this whole process, so thank you for your comments there. Okay, that's something for the board to think about, that's for sure. Okay. Board members, I'll just say that I have gone back and forth, losing sleep over this because it's not clear to me what is the best. Well, I think I know what's the best, but I don't know how it's all going to play out, and that's my concern. I'm having a tough time with this, and most decisions I don't have that much of a tough time with. A lot of us have been doing this for a long time, and this one's difficult. So, other board members, do you want to say anything or have any comments, or let us, do we want to do a straw poll to see where we're at before we go? Would that be helpful, Bob?
Well, I think it might be helpful after everybody's maybe, shared what they think, and then we can take a straw poll. If you'd indulge me for a couple minutes, when I get faced with these, wake up in the middle of the night kind of issues, I just kind of go back to the fundamentals, and I try to look at, what is it we're charged with doing? What are the factors we can consider, and what sort of facts are there in the record, one way or the other, on those issues? So, we're sort of charged with promoting the development of affordable housing consistent with local concerns, and those concerns can fall into 4 categories that we've talked about before: the need to protect health and safety, not just of the occupants, but the members of the community; the need to protect the natural environment; the need to promote better site and building design in relation to the surrounding community and the municipal and regional planning; and then to preserve open spaces like parks and things like that, which that last one I don't think is really impacted here. But I went back through the materials in the record as they relate to these things, and I tried to evaluate, each one and what sort of evidence we had. And I think on health and safety, we had comments from the fire chief that has already been mentioned. They mentioned that the 2 6-story buildings, and I don't want to paraphrase this because I want to be true to what's actually in the record and not, try to spin it one way or the other. So what he said was that the size of the two 6-story buildings, both with garages under, one consisting of 108 residential units and the other with 84 residential units, has the possibility to create an extreme challenge for the fire department, staffed as Walpole Fire currently is. He also indicated that the fire department has consistently objected to the waiver that town council was discussing about dead-end streets, and that the project will essentially function as a subdivision, even though it's not being approved under that. And so that subdivision regulation that limits the length of dead-end streets was a concern. And while he did mention that the gated access was acceptable from an emergency access standpoint, you know, in my mind, during the vast majority of the time, there's really only one entrance and exit. It's only when there's an emergency, and then we have to wait until someone who can open that gate can arrive at the site and open it in order to it to function as a second means of egress. So he mentioned a bunch of other concerns that were based more in the fire code, which are not really our purview. So I didn't really consider those because that's a state regulation and they're going to have to comply with that anyway. With respect to traffic impacts, the police chief raised a number of issues. He said that the Summer Street infrastructure, including the sidewalk connections to Delapa Circle, are not adequate, that the roadway is hilly, winding, and can be unsafe crossing the street or for vehicular travel. More sidewalks and improved signage and infrastructure needed. In response to that, the applicant took the position that it's not responsible for those conditions because it's not, related to the development proposed. But the police chief responded by saying that that he, in his view, the sidewalk connecting the development to Summer Street is not unrelated because it will become part of the neighborhood and will be a significant amount of children, pedestrians, and bicyclists coming in and out of the development. And he recommended that the applicant update the infrastructure in that area. He also raised a concern that the applicant had stated in a public meeting with department heads of the town that it would use the traffic study prepared for the project to work with the DOT to reduce the speed limit along Washington Street near the Boyden School. He said that the speed limit in that area is related to the development as there will be more traffic generated, and that the speed limit is outdated in his view. The applicant said that he would not pursue that. Tetra Tech also had some comments related to traffic, and I'm just going to quote here a couple of paragraphs. It says the applicant's traffic analysis indicates the project will result in a significant degradation in level of service at the intersection of Summer Washington and Neponset Streets, and has offered no proposed measures to mitigate those project impacts. Given the intersection is close to the Boynton School, is close to an existing railroad crossing, is subject to massive situational demands from events at Gillette Stadium, and currently experiences significant traffic queues, the added volume of both vehicles and pedestrians from the project presents a safety concern that should be addressed. They also noted that the project causes a degradation in level of service from LOSC to LOSE during the evening peak hour at the intersection of Summer Street and Neponset Street. The additional traffic due to the project on Neponset Street northbound approach causes the degradation and an increase in the queue length from 130 to 247 feet. A queue length of 247 feet would spill back through the Washington Street extension intersection with Neponset Street. So to address those, Tetra Tech proposed that the decision should include a condition that the project construct improvements to that intersection, as was discussed during the hearing and had been discussed with the department heads, and that that should be constructed prior to the 50% occupancy level of the project. The applicant didn't agree to that, but instead proposed in a response to Tetra Tech's comments that they would construct the improvements, quote, in partnership with the town, but, quote, subject to execution of an agreement with the town, which is acceptable to the applicant. So in other words, it wasn't a firm commitment to construct any of those improvements, and it's generally agreed that the $500,000 contribution that was subsequently discussed is not sufficient to construct the improvements that were presented. And we, of course, heard from a number of residents about the difficult traffic conditions in that area. And there are significant concerns about adding a project with many hundreds of parking spaces for cars that will just exacerbate the existing condition. So that was safety related to traffic. Sorry, I'm going on, but I just want to get all this out on the table. With regard to, sorry. What's in my space here? So with regard to the need to promote better site and building design in relation to the surroundings and the municipal and regional planning component of local concerns, Davis Square Architects, which was a peer reviewer for the board, made a number of comments with regard to the site plan as it both initially proposed and as it evolved throughout the process. And while he saw some improvement in the amount of shared open space within the development, he ultimately concluded that the shared space does not appear to be large enough given the number of units who will utilize it. He also concluded that the proposed development does not resemble the existing residential pattern of development in the nearby area. Rather than an extension or enhancement of existing development, it is proposed to be more of a campus setting with its own building types and streetscapes. As such, it is proposed to be more of a campus setting with its own, just said that. And he said that his primary issue of concern continues to be inadequate space on the site to develop sufficient usable open space between the structures, along with other landscaping that provides buffering and diminishes the heat island effect, etc. So in addition to those items in the record, I also was thinking about the waivers that are being granted to the applicant, which are substantial when you consider the size of this project for the location that is proposed, and all of which the board evaluated and granted for the express purpose of increasing the amount of affordable housing in Walpole. So at the end of the day, and trying to balance this, I believe that the maximum 4 stories at the multifamily buildings provides the most affordable housing consistent with our local needs. Reducing the size of the buildings will address the concerns that I discussed above by reducing the challenge for firefighting, reducing traffic-related impacts, and reducing the intensity of demand for the shortcomings in the site plan related to usable open space and site planning, and also to reduce the height of the buildings to something that still is frankly not consistent with the neighborhood, but is nevertheless more in keeping with the neighborhood than the 6-story building, which is a valid planning concern. And even at a reduced building height of 4 stories, the contribution to affordable housing is still substantial with this project. We're adding about 191 units, as I counted, to the subsidized housing inventory, which is a nearly 30% increase in affordable units within the town. And overall, as a board, I think we are upholding our obligation to tip the scales in favor of affordable housing, but not so much that it compromises the legitimate local concerns presented by the project. So based on all of that, I'm in favor of a 4-story multifamily building. Sorry for the droning on, but can't help myself sometimes.
Very nice job.
Yeah, thank you. And you covered so much of the things that we've gone over and we've had in the public testimony and we've had from the peer reviews. And the only thing that you didn't address in there that I had in my notes was the fact that it is in the water protection overlay district. And although it's going to be on sewer, we understand that, it still is a intensive development, and that is pretty much where I would come down. Bob, I've gone back and forth, 4, 6, whether it's 4, 6, 5, what's the number, and I'm now at the point where I think 4 is the best thing for the town, the future residents and the present residents of the community. That 4 is the number that I'm comfortable with. Other board members, what's your thoughts?
Want me to go first? I agree, Bob. Thank you for doing such a great job. I agree on the 4 stories. I've been wavering. Like John said, I've been doing this a long time. Many 40Bs wavered. Those Tylenol PMs get me through the night after these hearings, and I'm not kidding. And I really believe that Bob pretty much wrapped it up much more eloquently than I ever could. And I agree, 4 stories.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Drew or Jane, where are you coming in on this?
Well, I think I made myself pretty clear when I've gone back and forth and back and forth. And in the interest of not being somebody who goes, who flip-flops, I'm not going to vote approval, and I'm not going to vote in the affirmative of this, because I still feel far too dense and far too safety related things. So on this, I'm going to.
Okay, thank you, Jane. And as we know, this for a case like this, it is majority vote for the board. But I value everybody. One of the things, Jane, I guess the question is it exactly what you want? Maybe not. But is it the best we can get under the current rules and regulations? And maybe you still feel it's not, but I think we've spent a lot of time on this. It's a better project than it started with. So let's see where we're at when it comes time for the vote. Okay, Drew Delaney.
Yeah, I said at the last meeting I was in favor of 4 stories, and Bob hit the nail on the head with his explanation of really what I was feeling a lot before, but obviously a lot clearer this way. I'm not in favor of the project. I do believe it's too dense with only one access point. But I think that for the height waiver, I'm in favor of 4 stories as a maximum. And I know we were talking about last week about if it needed to be defined as a footage or of a height, or if it was stories that we were permitting, and I don't know, did we ever get that resolved, or it's just by the stories? Okay.
Okay, and so Drew, one of the things I'm just trying to figure out moving forward, would you be in favor of this project with 4 stories, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I would be in favor of that, John.
Okay.
John, in the interest of making it a unanimous board, as reluctant as I am, I would go along with the rest of the board and accept 4 stories.
Okay, and although Jane, I understand where you're coming from. You do whatever you need to do, and I think that's really what it comes down to. You need to do what you need to do. It's not based on whether it's a unanimous vote. I think I gotta just say, I think it's stronger if it is a unanimous vote, but please, anybody, if you don't like it, you don't vote for it if you don't. Well, if you don't think it's the best thing that we can get for the town under the 40B rules, that's really what it's coming down to. There's things on this I don't like, but I recognize what we're up against, and that's what it comes down to. Okay.
Well, I think I'm in the same camp with Drew. I think he's probably grappled with the same things that I have, and the fact of the matter is, it's going to be. So, if this is the best we can do, it's the best we can do, and I'll accept that.
Okay, so thank you, board members, for everybody's comments and input. Ashley, you've been with us on this. Do you have anything procedurally to add. We're not going to take any additional testimony or anything, but just, procedurally where we're at on this.
I mean, you have a draft that I think reflects this current position of 4 stories. So, unless there are any edits that you wanted to make to that draft, otherwise, it sounds like the board is in a place where they're ready to vote on the decision and get it filed.
Yes.
Okay, and I think after a very long process and some revisions of the development, I think we have a better project than we started with, but that's where we're at. Town Council, what's your guidance to us at this point? You've heard where the board members are.
So I have, and I agree with Ashley. We have a decision. You have a decision in front of you that reflects 4 stories. What I don't have is the updated. I never received an updated waiver list. So I just don't know if the waiver list includes. I think the only change on it was the 8-foot fencing.
That was the only additional waiver, was the 8-foot fencing that was to protect the neighbors on Summer Street.
Yep.
Okay. Board members, have you had a chance to review the? We got the red line copy, and really, the only thing that we had hanging out there that we had to deal with tonight was the height of the buildings. And I've woken up in the middle of the night on this one, and I'm usually a pretty sound sleeper, so this has been tough. Anybody else have anything? Because I think Amy Questle, I think we can vote on this tonight and move on one way or another. We're going to move on this.
Yeah. Yes.
Bob?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to the board members and town council and Judy and Ashley and Amy for sticking through this, Patrick for the last couple, because this is it's a difficult task for a volunteer board to be faced with a project of this magnitude in the town. And I thought, through the pandemic and going to virtual hearings, and it's been a challenge, and I just want to thank everybody for being really attentive and focused on the things that matter, and I think we've come to a good spot as a board, and so just wanted to say that.
Agreed.
Thank you, Bob. I think you pulled it all together very, very nicely. So that was somewhat easier for the members of the board to vote on it. So I want to thank you, Bob. Put a lot of time into it. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Bob.
So we have the draft decision. It's 35 pages, and it's been updated. Things have been changed, and at this point, the hearing is closed. Town council, do you want to just? I've never. Well, I guess I've done these before, but what's your guidance on how we should? And it sounds like the board is going to vote in favor of this decision. Do you have any guidance to us as far as moving forward on the actual vote?
So I guess the first thing that I would have you vote on is the waivers, because the waivers are what makes the decision, in my opinion. So what we whatever waivers that you grant is how the project is actually, kind of formed. So we did have an entire meeting on the waivers. So I don't remember whose suggestion that was, but it was a great suggestion because, you know, usually it's like at the very end we're struggling with waivers. We don't have to do that here because we did go through all of the waivers, and so I don't have an issue with you guys voting on the waiver list with the addition, you know, with the voting on an amended waiver list, including the 8-foot fence. So just because it's not necessarily right here, you know, you can vote on it and include the waiver of the 8-foot fence also. And then when the waiver list is going to be attached as Exhibit A, and we can then, when we attach it as Exhibit A, we'll add that waiver in. And just so you know, normally, if any of you recall, normally on our decisions, we do Exhibit A is a list of all of the documents that were, you know, relied upon, et cetera, and Exhibit B is the waiver list. So due to the fact that this was such a large project with so many comments, et cetera, I have instead incorporated, you know, everything by reference, the entire record into the decision. So we do not have a separate list of every single document because we have that already on the website, which we can easily convert and put that in the file.
May I ask a procedural question?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way, I feel like we got a lot of very important deliberation from Board Member Fitzgerald tonight. So can we just refer, like at the bottom where it says and the board relied upon, can we just cite this in there? Or?
Yes, we can. So if the board wants to if they want to vote on the decision tonight, which would include Member Fitzgerald's comments, I will incorporate those comments into the decision in writing as findings.
Okay. Sounds good.
Provided that this meeting is recorded. It is, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I took notes, Bob, but I don't think I could. I'm not that good.
And I don't know if a written version of.
I actually had to shut off my video because I had to go find another pen. My pen ran out of ink. So I just shut off my video to find another pen.
I did apologize in advance, I will say that.
No, but so yeah, I mean, so there are ways that we can vote on this decision because we're all aware of what we're voting on, what you're voting on. I'm not voting, but what you're voting on.
Okay.
Just for just a question, would it be safer to just, you know, have the document sort of completed and clean with the attachments that need to be there, and then we can just vote on it, having it all in front of us? Or because I don't want to miss any of the. Yeah, or we're okay. If we're okay as is, that's fine. But if there's going to be attachments and stuff, I think everybody should see what it says, you know, before, if they want to.
Is it, I feel like it's the standard practice for, I think you're the clerk, to review that final decision and sign off on it. So I don't know if the board can review that authority in their motion just to, you know, finalize.
That's fine with me. I just, I don't know how the motion would be worded now, like subject to adding this to the waiver list and adding some other information that's just basically recorded from here. So, but I don't know what the board feels about that.
We're gonna vote separate on the waivers, correct? As amended, right?
Yes.
And then we can vote on the real vote as amended because you're gonna add findings.
Okay.
Is that? Okay.
That works for me. Sorry, I misunderstood. Okay. Thanks.
John's gonna mess with us now.
No, I'm not. so, could I have a motion to approve the waivers, including the 8-foot fence?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Suzanne, second by Jane. Any further discussion? Okay, so this is a vote on the waivers. All those in favor of the, roll call vote. Bob Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Suzanne Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Jane Coffey.
Aye.
Drew Delaney.
Aye.
And I'm John Lee, aye. Okay, good. So that's the waiver part. Okay, next we have the decision, and this is the one drafted by town council. We have a copy of it. So, Amy, Amy Questle, how do you recommend that we move forward on this?
So I would recommend that you move to approve the decision as drafted with amendments as described by Member Fitzgerald.
Okay. But I have a motion to approve the decision for property located at 51, 53, 55 Summer Street as described in the decision with amendments, with comments by Member Bob Fitzgerald.
So moved.
Okay, could we have a second on that?
Second.
Second by Jane.
Second by Jane.
Okay. Next, any further discussion on this? Amy Questle, are you comfortable with that that wording?
Yes, that's fine. Yep, it's general.
Okay. Next, roll call vote on this. Bob Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Suzanne Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Drew Delaney.
Aye.
Jane Coffey.
Aye.
And I'm John Lee, aye. Okay.
Then one more, if we could just do one more vote, which is to a vote to authorize Member Fitzgerald to sign the decision. And then we don't need all 5 signatures. We just need the one. So that helps in COVID situations. You don't have to.
Oh, is that a new COVID rule?
No, it's as long as you vote to authorize one member to sign with a vote at a meeting, you're fine. So I've been recommending it during. Yeah, I've been recommending it during COVID.
Okay.
Okay, Bob, are you available to sign the decision?
Yeah, I'll catch it at town hall. Is it?
Yeah, I volunteered you, Bob, because you're going to be reviewing it anyway. Sorry.
All right. Nope, I volunteered myself for that, I think. No, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, so the motion is a motion to authorize Member Bob Fitzgerald to sign the decision on behalf of the board.
I don't know what happened.
Okay, as Amy stated, could I have a motion to approve Bob Fitzgerald to sign for the board on this decision?
So moved.
Moved by Suzanne.
Second by Jane.
Second by Jane. Okay. Any further discussion on this? Thank you, Bob. Roll call vote. Bob Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Suzanne Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Drew Delaney.
Aye.
Jane Coffey.
Aye.
And I'm John Lee, aye. Okay. Very good.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else that we need to do?
No, but I will coordinate getting a final decision to Ashley and Amy and yourself to send out to Bob Fitzgerald.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks for your help, Amy. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Judy Barrett, everybody involved with this. Judy, Amy, Ashley, Patrick, Amy Messier. This has been a very difficult process, and not just because of COVID and everything involved. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Next on the agenda, Amy Messier, it just says February 2021 and March 2021 for the minutes, for review of minutes. Did we have some?
I believe I sent you February 22nd minutes a few weeks ago. Honestly, there's so many meeting minutes, but we can get them done maybe next meeting.
Okay.
The next thing you do have is the inclusionary zoning.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, thanks for putting that on. Board members, we did meet with Andrew Flowers probably about a month ago, talking about the inclusionary zoning bylaw. Normally, a zoning board of appeals stays out of zoning bylaws. And Suzanne, you're shaking your head, and I.
Oh boy, we stay in our lane.
Okay. The only thing is that when it comes to understanding affordable housing, I don't think there's many people in town that understand the true zoning aspects of affordable housing more than the zoning board does. So there's a committee trying to put together an inclusionary zoning bylaw, and it went to town meeting last fall and did not pass. And that people are trying to bring it back. I think that there were some issues with it last time, although I was in favor of it. The question is, the zoning board already said that we would be interested in being involved with this. What's that, Suzanne?
Not me.
Okay, no, you don't.
Don't they have to wait 2 years after something goes down?
No.
Why?
It's not.
I thought you did.
It's not in the town charter or the home rule.
Okay.
For it. So,
all right.
And that explains why we have a library, the new library. So, I think.
There you go. You are correct.
Very aware
That's
of
how
that.
we got our library. You are right.
But you couldn't bring. You might have a hard time bringing back the exact same piece of zoning bylaw change. But my expectation is this one will be revised and different. So. I'm willing to be on it because I think it's important that we have a zoning bylaw that is understandable and workable.
What?
Yeah. What's that, Jane?
Sorry.
Okay. So, other board members, what are your thoughts on this? And we already got an opinion from town council after our meeting that said it is fine, that we can do this. There's no conflict. It's not a legal problem. Does anybody else want to be on this, or what are your thoughts on it?
Can just add that some towns actually have a zoning bylaw review committee that reviews all zoning warrant articles, and that committee often will include members of the ZBA because you know how this bylaw works best, and it's a pretty common practice. And also I'd add, part of the lane of the ZBA is you're appointed by the select board, and the select board has voted to support this committee. So I'm sure that doesn't convince you, Suzanne, but just putting that out there.
Yeah.
Well, I
Go, Bob.
No, I think it's perfectly fine, in my view, to have members of the board participate on the committee. And if no one else wants to volunteer to join, John, I would be willing to do it. I think we need two, or the request is for 2 members.
Yep, there's a request for 2 members, and the reason why I think it's important I've already said, because we understand what happens with the zoning bylaws for affordable housing. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Jane, go ahead, Jane.
In participating in the committee, I can understand that, but it's my understanding that the zoning board of appeals should not have any part in presenting something to the town meeting. I mean, that was my understanding. I don't have any objections to being on, to working with them. But I'm not so sure that the zoning board itself is supposed to present any article. Am I right, Suzanne, or am I out left?
I'm already getting, I'm way wrong on everything on this. So don't ask me.
Suzanne, you have your opinion. Nobody's saying you're wrong. You have your opinion, and I have my opinion. And I had town council weigh in, and town council said it is appropriate for, a zoning board member to be on a committee to, develop new zoning bylaws. It's something that I've always avoided, but I think it's important in this case that we have somebody that understands it at the table. So,
Is the zoning, are you gonna speak at town meeting representing us?
no, I would never represent the town at town meeting. I would not represent the zoning board. I would represent myself, or if I'm on a committee, I might represent that committee if we're presenting. But that we're getting way down the road as far as what my interest in level is on this. My interest level is that we have somebody at the table as this is being discussed that understands affordable housing and what it means for the town and what it means for the communities. So.
And that, like John, that if need be, I'd be happy to serve on it as long as the town council has ruled that it's okay. That's fine.
Yep. So. Okay.
Yeah. A side note, I think that historically, you go to planning school and they beat you over the head with the problem of working in silos, right? They like day one through the end of time, they beat you over the head that working in silos is detrimental to all involved. And so there's, I think, this, mind shift of saying, hey, like, let's collaborate, let's work together. Everyone here has a lot of the same goals. So just speaking at a high, level outside of this. So I think it's great.
Okay, but we have also, Suzanne and I have both been planning board members, and
town meeting members, 30 years,
But I'm talking about staying in your lane, the term you use, Suzanne. And I think at one point people on conservation were trying to get involved with planning and even in zoning and things like that, and vice versa, maybe other boards. People need to stay in their lanes. But the lane of the zoning board right now is a skill set in affordable housing, and that's why I think it's appropriate. So I don't think we need a vote on this or anything. I think what we can do is we can notify what's the name of the committee, Ashley?
The zoning bylaw. Pat, do you know? You look like.
I would just say the inclusionary zoning bylaw subcommittee or something like that.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And there will, I believe there's going to be somebody from the planning board and from the housing, the affordable housing committee. So.
And I think Judy's going to sign off. So I just.
Yeah, Judy, unless you have something to guide us on this.
Yeah, Judy.
I just, I'm so sorry. John knows. I don't know if the rest of you do. I've actually been going between 2 ZBA meetings tonight, so I wasn't.
How's the other one going?
Pardon me?
How's the other meeting going?
Not well. That's a 40B. What do you want? But no, I think
you, Judy.
I'll go ahead and sign off. But yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on inclusionary zoning. If you want to hear them sometime, but probably not tonight.
Thank you, Judy,
Thank you,
very
Judy.
much. You've been
all right, guys.
Thanks, Judy.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Judy. Bye. Okay. So that was the only thing. We'll Bob and Jane, I will notify them that we have 3 members that are willing to sit and be on the joint committee on inclusionary zoning. Okay. Anything else?
Thanks, everyone. Covered a lot of ground tonight.
Yeah, we did. Okay.
This might be our last meeting, by the way. I don't know. I'm going to try and help finish out the other 40Bs, but I think you're in good hands here with Pat. So okay. I don't know how helpful I am anymore. So
well, we got through the big one tonight, and I appreciate all your work, Ashley, and I wish you well in all your future endeavors. So
thank you.
Likewise, Ashley, you've done it. You brought us a long way, and I really appreciate it. And good luck to you, whoever gets you and their employees got it done.
Here, here.
Yep, thanks, Ashley.
Okay. Okay, could I have a motion, unless somebody has something else, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Doesn't need to be a roll call vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay, good night, everybody.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.